Hello, friends. Welcome to Surviving Tomorrow, a podcast, newsletter, and publication about navigating life in an age of democratic destruction, ecological collapse, and economic irrelevance. Now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you're a visual learner, head over to jaredabrock.substack.com to follow along in print. I'm your host, Jared Brock, and today we're going to be discussing whether or not people should invest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. This episode is sponsored by Swan Bitcoin. If you'd like to get $10 in free Bitcoin to spend, visit swanbitcoin.com/Jared Brock. I'm in a good mood today, my friends. My freshly pressed apples are happily fermenting themselves into cider. My very pregnant wife is 4 days past her due date, and my mother has just landed on the continent after nearly 2 years without seeing her. So it's a good day, and I'd appreciate your thoughts and prayers in the weeks and 18 or so years ahead. I'm going to try to get a few episodes out this week, but with baby due at any moment, it's not so much a promise as a hope. So let's dive in, shall we? Non-wealth-backed, debt-based, government-printed paper money is the greatest scam of all time. America's central bank, called the Federal Reserve, is actually owned by private banks, including Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, and Goldman Sachs. Each of these are predatory corporations who actually pay some of their bankers to go to work for the Fed. In addition to stocking the Fed with their own people, the major banks sponsor political candidates and lobby them hard once they're in Congress, leading to a dangerous political situation called regulatory capture. It's the same in most countries. Essentially, rabid foxes now rule our global henhouse. Because America is bank captured, the richest people on earth get to monopolize legal tender and pillage your wealth whenever they please. And they do. If you haven't noticed yet, they're absolutely out of control right now, having printed 80% of all M1 money stock into existence in the past 18 months alone. When you 5x the amount of currency in the system, it's only a matter of time before your money is worth less. All this debt-based money printing has created a tidal wave of negative consequences in our lives, and we haven't even felt the effects of the past 2 years of crazy printing yet. They've dangerously inflated our house prices, they've wildly inflated stock prices, they've put the world $300 trillion in debt with no end in sight, they've devalued our purchasing power by debasing our legal tender. Not only does this straight up steal money from everyone holding cash, but it actually discourages savings, making people less anti-fragile and more dependent on the state, while creating an instant gratification culture instead of one that plans for the future. They've locked us into an unsustainable debt plus interest death spiral that requires all of us to compete against each other, and by pure mathematical necessity, heartbreakingly bankrupts more than 3,000 families per day for 30 years straight. They use their money power to set the agenda for the whole nation, spending on unending wars, toppling foreign governments, extracting wealth from poorer nations, and sacrifice from their own citizens, stealing trillions of hours of human life. In total, this crime against humanity has pillaged several quadrillion dollars worth of real wealth from active societal contributors. Let's not mince words. The corporate-controlled central bank money printing scam is the biggest sin and crime in human history. Enter challenger money. Given the utterly corrupt state of modern money, you can see why smart people who actually care about the sustainable long-term well-being of humanity started looking for a solution. One such person was Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know if Satoshi is a man, woman, group, or an AI, and we don't know if he, she, they, it is even still alive. Satoshi invented a new form of digital currency that could be sent peer-to-peer, even anonymously. The system can be trusted because all transactions are automatically verified by its decentralized network and recorded in a blockchain, which is essentially a giant decentralized cryptographic spreadsheet. On January 9th, 2009, Bitcoin was born. And then, greed set in. Our total global wealth is currently valued at around $400 trillion in American dollars. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. In early 2017, savvy speculators did the math. 400 trillion divided by 21 million equals, if Bitcoin eventually becomes the global currency, each Bitcoin would be worth 20 million bucks. That's when things went crazy. People started buying and hoarding coins. As supply constricted, the coin price rose. More people saw what was happening and jumped on board, bidding coin prices higher and higher and higher. Other people wanted to get in on the gold rush and started making their own inferior versions of Bitcoin. Today, there are over 12,000 cryptocurrencies on the market. Then the pandemic hit, and corporate elites sent the money printer into overdrive. As house prices and stock prices ballooned outrageously high, people like Michael Saylor realized they needed to get rid of their rapidly devaluing United States dollars, but couldn't rationally buy overpriced assets either. So they turned to Bitcoin as a speculative investment, further jacking the price, attracting more speculators in search of a quick buck in hard times. As greed and FOMO set in, and all those government stimulus checks arrived, prices soared even higher. Today, Bitcoins that cost a few cents worth of electricity are now quote unquote worth around $50,000 each. The total Bitcoin market cap now hovers around $1 trillion. So, should we invest? As my newsletter disclaimer makes crystal clear, nothing I write is financial, legal, or tax advice. Blah, blah, blah. You're an adult. Do what you want to do. But I don't think anyone should invest in Bitcoin for 4 major reasons. First, it has no intrinsic value. You can't eat it, wear it, or heat your house with it. It's not a productive asset. It isn't a factory that produces an item. It's not a field that produces a crop. It isn't a firm that offers a service. It has zero underlying value. It's not backed by land or commodities or any other form of real usable wealth. Bitcoin is just a bunch of computer files. Its value is derived solely from the trust that people place in it, namely that the price will continue to rise indefinitely and that there will always be a new investor/sucker to buy out the old ones. On that standard of belief, the evidence is crystal clear, and don't trust any online BitBoy who tells you otherwise. Bitcoin is currently being treated like a Ponzi scheme. So if your motivation for buying Bitcoin is to buy and hoard it until the price goes up, this is deeply unethical because someone will eventually get hurt. Currency is meant to be spent, given, or invested in producing real wealth for the world, not hoarded. Second, speculating in Bitcoin is a massive risk right now. Just remember what you're actually doing when you decide to quote unquote invest in crypto. You're betting against the established powers. A bet on crypto is a bet against centralized violence-backed money. It's a noble act, but an extremely risky investment strategy. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that many governments will make crypto illegal once they introduce their own totalitarian surveillance coins. See last week's Panopticoin episode for more. Third, we shouldn't seek to passively skim profits off the backs of others without contributing anything of real value to the world. I have a friend who owns 36 full Bitcoins. He fully expects them to be worth $10 million a piece within a decade or two. But has he contributed $360 million in value to the world? Not at all, and he admits just as much. All he did was buy a few $1,000s worth of digital files and waited for other people's greed and fear to pad his bank account. Shouldn't we want to use our money to make a real contribution? Fourth, when, not if, the next recession comes, when house prices plummet, the stock market crashes, and millions lose their jobs, people will need to pull money out of assets in order to fund fiat liabilities like mortgage payments and daily expenses. What's the most liquid asset most people have today? Crypto. When millions of crypto holders desperately need fiat cash to stay afloat, expect them to reluctantly pull tens of billions from the exchanges and sink prices, if not crash questionable coins like Tether and House of Cards operations like the DeFi and NFT markets. Wouldn't it just be better to be generous to the poor instead of gambling in an online casino? All told, it seems to me that investing in Bitcoin is an extremely unwise and likely unethical thing to do. But that's investing. It doesn't mean we still shouldn't buy Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. After much research and deep introspection, I have come to the conclusion that if the only 2 realistic options are an unfortunately hyper-individualist libertarian currency called Bitcoin versus the dystopian nightmare that is totalitarian surveillance currency, the inevitable decision for rational people is to side with the former. Humanity stands a better chance of achieving widespread well-being when we the people create our own money. So what should we do with crypto? Satoshi Nakamoto made a huge mistake when launching Bitcoin. He mined about 1 million coins, which would sell for about $50 billion today, but he never used them. Just like the BitBoy Ponzi speculators in the current market who dream of the day when Bitcoin is the world currency and they all get rich for doing nothing, Satoshi hoarded his coins instead. He just sat on them back in 2009, and all these years later, they're still just sitting there to this very day. So what should we be doing with cryptocurrency? I think, aside from investing, we should be doing the same thing that we do with every other currency. Number one, we should spend it. We need to spend crypto like crazy. Every day we treat it like an investment Ponzi scheme brings the whole thing nearer to the end as corrupt governments rapidly build their own Orwellian competitor coins. We need widespread global crypto adoption as fast as possible, where every man, woman, and teenager on earth is spending crypto daily, and businesses are transacting in hundreds of trust-based coins, ridding the economy of trillions in toxic debt-based money. Crypto needs to be so widespread that governments should be absolutely terrified to take it away from us. That's why we need to make crypto cheap and plentiful, spreading those Satoshis as far and wide as digitally possible. Number two, we should create our own cryptocurrencies. We have the opportunity to create sound money that can be a blessing to the planet and the poor, but most people are just interested in buying coins that are going to the moon. We could create coins that are stable, free from thieving inflation, backed by real wealth, that are fair and trust-based instead of violence-backed, that can serve as a secure means of payment even when governments try to exclude us from the global economy. On a personal note, if you know any technologists or investors, please send them this episode and get them to contact me via jaredbrock.com, as there's a group of us who would love to get a pro-human coin off the ground. Number three, we should give it away. Imagine if instead of hoarding his coins, Satoshi had sent the following text to millions of people. Hey, here's a free Bitcoin. Spend it. Smooches. Satoshi. You would have heard of crypto about 10 years ago if millions of people had immediately started using it in 2009. We could have had a 10-year jump on corrupt governments to reach global crypto adoption. Just look at El Salvador. When they made Bitcoin legal tender, they gave everyone $30 in free Bitcoin to get started, and 25% of the population jumped on board in the first 2 weeks. On the sinister flip side, China is doing the exact same thing to induce people into using its horrific social credit system-linked surveillance currency. When you give money away, people use it. We need to be generous with our money, be it dollars, pounds, euros, pesos, francs, or bitcoins. That's why my friend Dave gives Cardano's ADA coins to all his friends for their birthday. He wants them to experience money that's free of government control. That's why I'm putting my money where my mouth is and giving away $100 in free Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency of your choosing. Head over to Medium or Substack to enter. We need to be very wise with our wealth. That's why I encourage all my listeners not to invest in any currency. Currency is meant to be spent, invested, and given. And when it comes to cryptocurrency, we need to do all of that now before money is out of our control forever. If you think the Surviving Tomorrow conversation is important, the best thing you can do is email this podcast to your friends right now. I publish more than 150,000 words of free content each year, and it's the radical generosity of supporters like you that keep it free. If you'd like to become a patron, please visit jaredbrock.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.